So when I first got a PS2, this would have been back around 2003, 2002, something like. Does that make sense? I think something like that. And I remember I got three games with it. Right, the first game I played, it looked good. The other games looked all right, but the first game that I played, because it looked so cool, it looked so action packed, it was colorful, it was SSX tricky, and I remember really enjoying that. I think the second game I played was Star Wars Starfighter, which I remember being very difficult at the time. But looking back on it, it seemed like a lot of fun. It seemed like something that I'd even enjoy now. And the third game, the one that I left to last, but actually the one that I ended up liking the most, and for the longest time, you could have asked me what's your favorite game of all time, I would have said it's Dark Cloud. And I've always had this idea of Dark Cloud being this amazingly fun game. I remember the village creation being so much fun. I remember not being able to finish the first boss, and I just go back and I just rebuild the village, and I'd be having a lot of fun that way. So I'd sometimes go into the dungeons, but that wasn't really my favorite part of it. My favorite part of it was building, rebuilding, moving the builds around, going between them, talking to people, asking how they'd like me to rebuild the village. And they give me really abstract concepts of, I'd like to see the sun in the morning, and it's like, yeah, look at, like, now I understand what they meant is, they want the building facing a certain direction. uh, but back then I had no idea what they meant, so I was like, well, this looks like it might be facing the sun in the morning. I didn't, the game has a day-night cycle, which I could have just waited and seen where the sun was rising. I didn't do that. I just thought, maybe this looks pretty good. I put some trees around it, and I was like, yeah, looks good. I really enjoyed it. Going back to it now, though, it it hasn't aged well, right? Like most games, most people play games and they really enjoy them, and going back to it, they realize that they're not as good because games nowadays are better, right? It- you can't doubt that. Systems that we're using, and the engines that we're using, the lighting, it's all improved, you know? And I don't just mean graphical quality or the size of discs. No, I mean video games have, more so than they have in the past, conventions, right? Left trigger aims, right trigger fires. If you remember Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, it was a great game, no doubt about it. Great game. The controls were so horrible. The shooting controls specifically, right? Of course, uh, during PS2 era, the convention was, in vehicles, X to accelerate, square to brake and reverse. Now it's R2 and L2, or right trigger, left trigger, which is probably a better system. There's something to be said for the X and square, and yeah, having them under the same thumb so you can kind of control it a little bit better. Maybe we got used to it and it worked at the time. Because, like, I wouldn't have even considered changing the controls to be a right trigger, left trigger thing. But the thing about San Andreas that really annoyed me were the shooting controls. It was like circle to shoot. The lock on was like R1. It wasn't great, right? It worked, and we used it. But now looking back on it, we'd never do that anymore. I think the overall point that I'm trying to make is, no matter what people say, games nowadays are better than games 10, 15 years ago, right? And you might say, well, nostalgia takes me back to this game, and I'd much prefer to play this than any of this new shit. And yeah, okay, I'll accept that. But I don't think that's a better game. You know, it's a game that you'd prefer to play, certainly. Um, and I can understand that on some level, being that there are a lot of games that I really enjoy, but they get like 2 out of 10 and 3 out of 10, you know? And this isn't a sort of thing against, gaming journalists. No, not at all, right? They're entitled to their opinions, and I'm entitled to my opinions, right? Assassin's Creed 3, amazing game. A lot of people didn't like it for some reason. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, a lot of people did like it. I liked it too. So sometimes my opinions equate to the opinions of the majority even. Sometimes they don't, right? I'm sure that's the same for everybody. There are games that nobody else seems to like that you just love, right? And you have guilty pleasures and whatever. But what I'm sort of arguing against is this notion that games are getting worse somehow. Games are getting more repetitive and all samey, and the reason that that's happening is because we do have these conventions, and these conventions are forcing people. I know that's a sort of strong word to use, and I'm sure they could make a game where it's X to shoot and L1 to reload, and I mean I think Halo to some extent did that right up to Halo 4 even. I don't know if Halo 5 still does the right bumper reload, but Halo now has the iron, not proper iron sights, but it has a zoom in feature, which it never had. I mean, you had the right stick stuff for binoculars, and I guess some people use that. On some weapons it did give you a zoom in. But I don't know. I don't know. Do people really dislike this new movement towards making everything better, making everything so that everybody can understand it? Do we want to go back to games where we had no idea what the fuck was going on? I think on some level you have to make, controls a certain convention, because nowadays we don't have booklets in games anymore, right? We don't have the controls there. We just have tutorials sometimes, and other than that, you have to assume shit. But that's all. I wanted to show you this gameplay of the Dark Cloud for the PS2, and I just wanted to talk about that. I just wanted to get that off my chest. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people agree, a lot of people disagree. Uh, feel free to leave your opinions anywhere. It doesn't have to be on this video. You can make your own video, whatever, right? I just want to let you guys know that. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you guys next time.